which is titled Elon's Brain. I'm going to read through Elon's quotes from the last year in rapid fire in chronological order, and then I'll lay out my interpretation. These will get repetitive, but I think it's important to see which things have been repeated the most. First, on Twitter last March, quote, main Tesla subjects will be scaling to extreme size, which is needed to shift humanity away from fossil fuels and AI, but will also include sections about SpaceX, Tesla, and the Boring Company, end quote. Next, the Q1 2022 earnings call. Quote, at 5, 10, 20 million vehicle levels, you really have to analyze the macroeconomic, the tonnage of lithium that you need, of nickel, of iron phosphate, of graphite, separators, electrolytes. It looks like really just macro tonnage. And when we think about the need for this for the world as a whole, what are the limiting factors for accelerating the advent of a sustainable energy future? Whatever the most limiting factors are, Tesla will take action on those limiting factors, end quote. Next, in the annual meeting in early August, quote, big picture, what does it take to make Earth fully self-sustaining? From an energy standpoint, just map it out. Tesla will try to be as useful as possible in this regards, and hopefully lots of other companies can join in and help, end quote. Then, later in the meeting, quote, Master Plan Part 3 is going to be fundamentally about scaling, just looking at the overall problem from a global macroeconomic standpoint and saying what are all the things that are needed to achieve a fully sustainable economy. I think a lot of people don't really know what tonnage of lithium, of cathode, anode, separator, electrolyte, electronics. What are all the things that need to be done? The sooner we do that, the better for the planet, end quote. On August 10th, quote, Part 3 is about scaling sustainable energy at a civilizational level to enable a bright future for Earth, end quote. Then, in October, quote, Master Plan Part 2 is all about tonnage, end quote. Then, 3 weeks ago, quote, Master Plan Part 3, the path to a fully sustainable energy future for Earth, will be presented on March 1st. The future is bright, end quote. And finally, 2 weeks ago, looking forward to Investor Day. By this, we mean the broadest definition of investor, as in the people and life of Earth. It will be a message of good hope and positivity for the future, end quote. For me, these comments tell us as much about Elon as they do about the master plan, and that matters as much as what's in the plan itself because it's the glue that holds everything together. His wording is optimistic and consistent, and he has a great track record of delivering on his master plans. They're not abstract thought pieces, but rather actual business plans. Why is that important? Because Elon creates inspiring narratives that people want to get behind, and then he works insane hours along with those people to make the impossible possible. It's leadership. Beyond that, Elon wants to give hope for the future. He said a number of times that it depresses him that people think the world is doomed due to climate change. The reality is that climate change is solvable if we can let go of the pessimism, embrace a plan, and take action. And Elon's coming to the table with hope, a battle plan, and an army. But besides the classic hallmarks of leadership, there's also a philosophy at play here. There's a sense of urgency that underlies everything that Elon does, and it's no mistake that Tesla's mission statement says accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy. There's a book that Elon's recommended called What We Owe the Future that basically says that the more you can do and the sooner you can do it, the greater the magnitude of your total impact over time. Or, put another way, it's the area under the curve. For example, if we compare a materials-constrained versus unconstrained forecast for EV growth, the difference is roughly 400 million EVs produced by 2035 versus about 700 million that could have been produced. Not only that, the earlier each of those vehicles is produced, the longer they'll be on the road reducing carbon emissions. That is, it's not just about transitioning the world to sustainable energy. It's about doing it as quickly as possible because every year counts. The faster that the transition happens, the lower the likelihood that we suffer the worst potential consequences of climate change deep in the future. So with that philosophy in mind, Elon's sense of urgency makes a lot more sense. He's been pushing the sustainability stone up the hill as fast as possible because he realizes the impact of every single year on the next 50 to 100 years. That brings us to the master plans. Master Plan Part 1 was about building enough scale to make electric vehicles commercially viable. Master Plan Part 2 was, on a surface level, mostly about self-driving vehicles. However, during that time, Tesla's biggest achievements have arguably been radically improving the manufacturing of vehicle and energy storage products, while on the software end creating grid management tools and mastering AI software and infrastructure. Now, Master Plan Part 3 will be about solving the extreme materials challenge of shifting the world to renewable energy, and that primarily means battery materials. An analogy that comes to mind with the master plans is strategy games, where your first priority is to survive, then it's to build out your skill trees and resilience, then it's about collecting massive amounts of resources to deploy assault forces to sweep the board. The problem is that in the strategy game called reality, the difficulty is currently set on hard. Past 2025, the growth of the global battery supply is forecasted to slow to an anemic 16% per year. That's a problem if Tesla wants to grow from 100 gigawatt hours of cell consumption last year to 3,000 gigawatt hours of cell consumption in 7 years, which is, on average, a 53% growth rate. To put that in perspective, here's Tesla's growth rate plans in comparison to global battery supply forecasts. It's clear that if Tesla only focuses on their own needs, they'll quickly outstrip global supply. So, in my view, Master Plan Part 3 will be an action plan at a planetary level rather than a company level. There were 4 clues to this in Elon's comments over the past year. First, his wording around mapping the transition to sustainable energy and how Tesla can be useful as part of that. Second, his repeated use of words like macroeconomic, global, Earth, and civilizational. Third, his call to arms for other people in the industry to also pitch in to help. And then fourth and finally, the fact that Elon said that Master Plan Part 3 will include sections about SpaceX, Tesla, and the Boring Company. With the context and scope of Master Plan Part 3 out of the way, let's go a level deeper in terms of detail. The biggest focus of Master Plan Part 3 seems to be the tonnage of materials required to transition the world to sustainable energy. Elon mentioned tonnage 4 times in the past year, and he even mentioned specific battery materials like lithium, separators, electrolyte, cathode, and anode. So it should come as no surprise if he actually lays out a shopping list of all the materials and specifically how many millions of tons of each that we need. As we know, it'll require 20 terawatt hours of steady-state production at a global level to transition the world to sustainable energy, which would be about 14 million tons of lithium carbonate equivalent per year. And those factories will need to be running for about 15 years to complete the transition, for a total of about 300 terawatt hours or 200 million tons of lithium carbonate equivalent. And bear in mind, that's just lithium, which makes up less than 5% of the weight of a battery pack. These numbers aren't just extreme, they're super colossal. But if, as a civilization, we can secure all those materials rapidly, the future is indeed bright. Cheap, clean, and abundant energy on a global scale can solve a lot of what